What I'm going to talk about in this video is my theory, but also a theory that's backed by scientific research at the moment on dopamine theory, which is the main theory used to prescribe antipsychotic medication for people with psychosis and schizophrenia. But I'm going to explain my theory of what causes hallucinations. Now, I noticed probably about 3 years ago that maybe 4 years ago that I was in a hallucinatory state. I was experiencing voices daily. It's just been a concurrent theme of my 12 years of this experience. And I was going on a dating platform to try and remove some of the isolation that I was feeling and the loneliness. And because of the way that I used to think very delusional ways back then without the full understanding of the condition I have now, I used to create delusional worlds quite frequently to sort of calm down my nervous system and interact with my subconscious mind in ways that I've detailed in my other videos. One of the ways that I would do this is by generating a reality which supported something that I would like to see. So when I was on the dating platform, I ended up talking to someone who wasn't very interested in me, but to comfort my feelings of isolation and the loneliness I was feeling, I developed a strong delusional world where this person was working for some organization to comfort me, and that person, she was going to message me back at this time in the evening, and blah 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 blah. Now, I'd created this delusional world, if you like, and at around the time I thought this person would reach out to me, I felt my phone physically vibrate in my pocket, pulled it out excitedly and looked at it, and there was no notification. Now, what's interesting about that is that it's a common experience of a lot of people, and there's studies on this. It's called phantom phone vibration. It's actually a well-observed psychological phenomenon that doesn't currently yet have an explanation as to why it happens. The reason I think it happened is that I created a strong level of delusional expectancy for that event to happen, and my body created a physiological manifestation of that hallucination. So let me break that down a little bit more. What happens in the brain is that we have something called a reality threshold area, right? And this part of the brain, you can look this up as well. I'll probably put it on screen. But the reality threshold effectively means that the brain requires a certain signal strength to break that reality threshold and perceive something as real. The idea is that delusional thoughts can become so strong in their potency or energetic formation that they break the reality threshold and they produce the expected result, what they think is going to happen, right? And I noticed this another few times because now I was really paying attention to, do my delusions have some correlation with my hallucinatory experiences? And I noticed a time when I was scrolling through YouTube videos, shorts, believing that the algorithm was communicating with me and sending me secret messages to enhance my soul. And the song kept coming up. And I started to create a delusional world where this song was in fact everybody cheering for me and singing this song in support of me. Very delusional, I know, but it's important as to how this manifested later. What happened then is that after a little while, I'd stopped listening to the YouTube videos and I was in my room and I was going through a bit of a stressful state, and I heard, as if it was on small speakers in my room, that song from the YouTube video. And I got up and I clicked. I was like, okay, I can trace that back to the delusional thinking that I was having and this strong emotional connection. So what's happened is when I'm stressed, that delusion has in a sense broken the reality threshold, and now it's playing the music through the speakers. And then I observed this a couple more times because now I'm really with laser focus paying attention to my emotional experience moment by moment to try and spot the patterns between the delusion, the pre-dromal kind of psychosis, if you like, and the hallucination. And what I found is this one time I bought an Android phone, and because of the way that my memory works, it doesn't serve me as well as it did. I pulled out my phone expecting it to be my iPhone, and I heard the Apple keyboard as I was using it just for a split few seconds. And I was like, whoa, this is an Android phone, but I've just heard the Apple keyboard. And I had hallucinated that as well. Another time when I first moved into my van, I was so stressed and so worried. I kept thinking that the CIA was going to kill me when I first moved into the van, and that I was effectively going to be hunted down in some way. So I was creating emotional connections to a delusional world. And the first time I tried to sleep in my van, I parked somewhere really quiet. It was the first time I was staying in the van. And I was very afraid, and I feel like that was activating that tendril of that delusion of being killed. And I remember hearing hearing people step on gravel and talking and approaching the van, only to look out and see a completely empty car park. And so my brain had created that expectation of what it perceived to have had to happen, which is also very interesting. And so what my theory of hallucinations is that when someone has broken from a reality construct, be it a philosophical one, a religious one, any form of reality construct, what happens is that what the person is able to expect is removed. In habitual environments, in environments where there is some framework, like a Christian community, an Islamic community, a Jewish community, whereas there's some behavioral framework that anchors people into a social reality, it enables people to form reliable expectations, which means that the brain doesn't have to fill the gaps. As we know, even with the color purple doesn't exist. There is no photon for purple, right? Purple is an imaginative replacement to what we think will be in place of the missing color in that spectrum of light for us. And the same way that love is a construct of the brain that doesn't fully exist as one neurochemical equation, but really exists as a complex interplay between all things, and is just as much of a construct, if you like, as anything else, as purple is perhaps. And so what's happening is, outside of these expectancy frameworks, when people have had their trust broken, because remember, psychosis and schizophrenia psychosis has got an 87% correlation rate with ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences like trauma, emotional abuse, physical abuse, etc. And schizophrenia has an 80% correlation with at least one ACE score, adverse childhood experience. And so the proof is here that once people's trust has been broken from the sociological reality around them, and that they don't have a reliable reality framework to fit into, they create delusional worlds to fill in for the gaps in reality that they're experiencing. And through that process, it creates strong emotional connections to that landscape, or strong emotional expectancies is one way to think of it, so that in the lack of the framework, the brain will fill in the gap. Similar to the gap in the spectrum of light, it will fill in the gap with what it believes to be there. And obviously, this is going to then be a hallucination. Now, the complexity of that system that I'm explaining is deeper than we could imagine, because people see demons and creatures and hear voices of devils and all this stuff. And that's why it's so important to move towards a more reliable reality framework, and it should be the sole mission of treatment for psychosis and schizophrenia now. But effectively, that's what's happening. And until there is a better explanation, my explanation is the one that should be used in psychological models for treating the condition. And what that would mean is that we try to create a space or environment that is as predictable and as possible, and has the highest level of natural expectancy outside of delusional thinking and confusion in reality frameworks as possible. Now, that is quite an extreme thing to say, but what it means is that people with psychoses, people with schizophrenia, cannot be in environments to begin with initially that might be multicultural, that might be chaotic, and they don't know what to expect. And that is what I believe to be the future of the treatment. It needs a good hospital and a nice setting where expectancy can be properly played out naturally and thought habits can be encouraged. But to conclude that video as to what I think causes hallucinations in these conditions, once broken from a reality framework through distrust, delusional worlds are built up to fill in the gaps of the areas which are considered unknown by the individual. Once these delusions fill in the gaps, they create emotional expectancies that then generate what they expect to see in the gaps of this information from the lack of social framework that they have. That is included somewhat in my essay, but I'm going to be writing another essay on that. If you're interested, you can join my Discord community or follow this channel for more. Have a great day.